Let's talk to Rear Admiral Chris Parry and find out what he makes of it. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
So, obviously, let's talk first of all about the sort of strategic stuff. Iran will now face some kind of retaliation by Israel. In your view, Chris, what will they do, and how kind of, you know, shall we say, restrained will they need to be?
Well, Mike, I think what you've seen with this ballistic attack is really how weak Iran is. Iran would have known that most of these missiles would have been intercepted, but the problem for Iran is that they've totally failed to support their axis of resistance, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and they had to do something. And if this is all they could do, then it really shows how few options they've got. What they've done, of course, is said to Israel, look, this is how weak we are, come and get us. And all the options are on the table for Israel now as to what they want to do, whether they want to go for Iran's nuclear facilities, their power plants, or indeed the oil production facilities at Karg Island, which produces about, which exports 90% of Iran's oil. So it's got all the options available. I suspect Israel will take its revenge coldly. It'll think about it. And one thing I've learned with Israel, it'll be a surprise.
Yes, I think so. Because what Israel have proven also over the past sort of week and perhaps fortnight is that they will do what they wish to do regardless of the international community. Because, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu went to the United Nations last week. He didn't really get much support for what he said he wanted to do. And then he went and did it anyway. And he took Hezbollah out in a quite spectacular manner, didn't he?
Yeah, well, what a tough, gallant little country Israel is.
Yeah.
That used to be us, Mike, if you remember. When we had our backs to the wall in 1940, we acted the same.
Well, do you know what I said at the weekend? I said Israel is now the world's policeman, which used to be a phrase that we used. It used to be a phrase the Americans used. But everybody's been frightened to do anything. Israel has shown the way, in my view, of how you deal with tyrants, how you deal with terrorist organisations, and how you deal with scumbags. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, we've spoken before, you know, in the West, in the free world, we're facing an alliance of autocratic regimes, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, such as we faced in the 1930s. And I'm afraid to say that it's taken us a long time in this country to wake up. We've got several sections of our population that actually don't believe in confronting dictators and this sort of thing. And it's a bit of a mess, actually, politically.
Yeah, I think it is. And that's where I wanted to move next, because once we've talked about the strategic plan for what Israel can do, and we'll come back to that, diplomatically speaking, I mean, I watched Keir Starmer's, press conference last night, where he sort of stood there looking terribly, terribly serious and saying that we stand full square behind Israel. Well, they didn't stand full square behind Israel when David Lammy got up and decided to withdraw licences from companies that sell not even really weapons, but components for weapons to a country which we all knew was a kind of performative act. We all knew he did it deliberately to appease the left of his party. We all knew that he chose the timing of the day that hostages who had been killed, shot in the head by Hamas, were being buried in Israel. You know, the man is a disgrace in my view, and I don't see how Keir Starmer can actually stand there and say we stand by Israel when his Foreign Secretary clearly doesn't.
I think the Labour Party are all over the place with regard to these conflicts in the Middle East. They've got a significant number of their MPs who frankly support the other side.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious that we've got sectarian interests playing out here and are affecting what people say and what people do. To be fair to Keir Starmer, he came out last night pretty unequivocally and supported Israel's right to defend itself. But when you've got your own MPs calling for Israel's right to defend itself being depleted severely by arms control measures, the most idiotic thing that I hear is this constant plea for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Because whenever you say to people, well, what happens after the ceasefire then? They haven't got a clue. It's totally astrategic, and I'm afraid to say, I think you've said it already, Mike, they've got to grow up, leave the student union and realise they're heading a G7 power that has influence and can actually do good in the world.
But surely, if you were a grown-up, as they keep claiming to be, you would order David Lammy to lift the suspension of those contracts, of those, services, those 30 firms that he's blocked from being able to sell things to Israel. Surely you would say, under the circumstances, now that Israel is under attack from Iran, which happens to be a nuclear power, we will now give them all the assistance that we can, and we will now give them back the licence to actually buy weapons from us.
Well, I think the problem is they're not seeing things in strategic terms. They're just acting tactically.
Right.
They are just reacting to public opinion and all the nasty words that are being said within their party.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a serious party of government if it doesn't see the real dangers in this situation in the Middle East.
Right.
Israel is the only democracy in that area.
Right.
It's had unspeakable crimes committed against it, and we should back it absolutely foursquare in our own interest. Mike, it's the same in Ukraine. If we don't actually stand foursquare behind Ukraine, the dictators of the world will get their way. And the problem is, for the last 70 years, for my lifetime, we've had this period of peace, and people can't remember what it was like when we were under threat of nuclear attack. Let me give you an example. Those 181 of ballistic missiles fired at Israel, if they're fired at the UK, every one of them hits. Yeah. We just don't have the defences to deal with that.
And what sort of damage would something like that do? I mean, in terms of, say, 181 missiles hitting, I don't know, not just London, but, say, London, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester. I mean, what kind of damage would that do?
Mike, these are tactical ballistic missiles, so they have very localised effects. But it would certainly blow up your block of flats. It would certainly blow up where you're transmitting from now. So London Bridge Station, the news building, that would go, all that sort of thing. That's the sort of damage it does. But if you saturate defences, they're going to do a lot of damage. The good thing about quite a lot of these Iranian ballistic missiles is they're not very accurate. So a lot of them are falling away from the targets. But we've got to remember, Israel is not a big country. It doesn't have strategic depth. Similarly, United Kingdom is very densely populated, particularly around London. It would be just like V1 and V2 rockets from World War II hitting us.
Absolutely right. So in terms of their strategic kind of retaliation, if you like, what do you see Israel actually doing? Because people have said to me this morning, we know that Iran's got some kind of nuclear capability. We're not quite sure exactly what it is. Would they try and target that? Would they try and take out any kind of nuclear capability they've got? What will they do, I suppose, is the question.
Mike, they don't have a nuclear capability yet. They're developing it. They're getting the centrifuges ready to give you the material to do that. So we always thought that Iran was on track to get a nuclear capability by 2025, by next year. But that's been delayed, and that accounts for quite a lot of the nervousness that I think the regime is showing. It's deeply unpopular within its own country. But for the repressive apparatus that they have, I'm sure the Iranian people would get rid of this regime. That's what they're really worried about. My hunch is that the Israelis will not want to disrupt international oil supplies, so I don't think they'll go for Karg Island. The nuclear facilities are underground, so they're going to be quite difficult to get at. What I've seen in terms of a pattern is that the Israelis take these things very personally.
Yeah.
So you've seen the pages with Hezbollah, you've seen them taking out Hezbollah, members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. I suspect we're going to have a comprehensive assassination campaign against the Iranian leadership.
Interesting. Great to talk to you, as ever. Chris Parry, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO commander there, with his view